The cold wind blew hard across the empty streets of Valera Prime. Snowflakes fell from the purple sky, glowing under the twin moons. Vera pulled her thin blanket tighter around her shoulders, her fingers numb, her legs shaking. She had not eaten. In 2 days, she had not slept in one. Her body was weak, but her hope still burned, even if only a little. She had knocked on 12 doors, 12 cold, silent doors. Each one had opened only for a second, just enough for the person inside to see her face, hear her beg, and then slam it shut. Alien or human, it didn't matter. No one wanted a broken refugee from the outer zones. Her skin was a soft silver blue, a tea, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Once, those features marked her as noble among her people. Now, they made her a target. She had been betrayed by her own kind, blamed for crimes she didn't commit. Now she was alone, hunted, and nearly out of time. The 13th door stood ahead. It was part of a small outpost, half hidden behind old defense walls. A tall tower blinked red on top an Earth-made signal. Light, a human, lived there. She had heard. They said he was strange, quiet, and dangerous. But she had no other choice. She walked forward, her feet dragging in the snow. She reached the door, placed a shaking hand on the panel, and pressed the old call button. Nothing happened for a moment. Then a buzzing sound, and the door creaked. Open an inch. A human man stood there. He was tall, broad-shouldered. With a rough beard and cold gray eyes, he wore a dark coat and had a weapon at his hip. Vera tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Please," she whispered. Her lips blue from the cold. "Show mercy." The man stared at her. Unmoving, she waited for the door to close like the others. Instead, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said, his voice calm, almost tired. Vera blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. He didn't look kind, but he didn't look cruel either. She stepped inside slowly, expecting a trick, a trap, a command to leave. But he simply shut the door and turned toward a heater. He tossed her a towel and pointed to a metal chair. "Dry yourself," he said, "and don't touch anything." She sat, wrapping the towel around her icy hands. Warmth filled the room, and her body began to tremble, harder shock setting in. The man poured her a cup of something warm and placed it near her. Vera grabbed it with both hands, sipping carefully, her eyes never leaving him. "What's your name?" he asked after a long silence. "Vera," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He gave a small nod, then walked to the corner and sat down, cleaning a small tool. No more questions. No threats, just silence. She couldn't understand him. Why would a human help her when her own kind had turned her away? What did he want in return? "You can stay one night," he said without looking at her. "In the morning, you leave." She nodded. Even though her heart sank, one night was more than 12 others had given her. One night was enough for now. The room was simple, filled with Earth tech and a few old alien relics. Weapons lined one wall, some old, some advanced. This man was no normal civilian. He was a soldier or had been one, later. After she had eaten a small meal he gave her, she lay on a floor mat near the heater. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, but her mind spun with questions. Why was she framed? Why had the others refused to help? And why had this stranger opened his door when no one else would? Outside, snow continued to fall, covering her footprints, erasing the path that brought her here, but deep in her heart, something shifted. Not quite hope, not yet, but something close. The man sat at a table, staring at a holographic image of a battlefield from long ago. He glanced at the sleeping girl, then back at the image. He didn't know her story, but he recognized that look in her eyes, the same one he had seen in soldiers who had lost everything. He told himself it was just one night, but deep down he already knew. Everything had just changed. The 13th door had opened, and with it, a new story had begun. Asterisk, the storm outside grew stronger through the night. Wind howled against the metal walls of the outpost, but inside, the fire hummed softly and the air was warm. Vera lay curled near the heater, her breath slow, her body finally still. Jackson watched her from the other side of the room. He hadn't slept. His mind raced with old memories, battles fought, friends lost, lies told in the name of peace. And now, this girl, silver-skinned, half-frozen, begging at his door. Why had he let her in? He told himself it was just basic kindness, but he knew better. There was something in her voice, in her eyes. Something that reminded him of the people he couldn't save during the war. He stood and walked toward the window, watching the snow swirl in the darkness. This planet had taken much from him, his crew, his future, his trust, and now it wanted to give him. What? A refugee? A mystery? A second chance? Behind him, Vera stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She saw the human standing by the window, tall and silent like a statue. For a moment, she thought he was a ghost. Then he turned, and their eyes met again. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice quiet, still unsure if she was truly safe. Jackson didn't answer right away. He walked back to the heater, knelt beside it, tossed in another fuel cell. "Because I've seen what happens when no one does," he finally said. Vera lowered her gaze. She understood those words all too well. She had lived them, door after door, face after face, all closed, all turned away. She sat up slowly, still wrapped in the blanket. "My people. They think I'm a traitor," she said, "but I'm not." "I figured," Jackson replied. "Traitors don't usually knock politely and beg in the snow." He handed her another warm drink. This one tasted different, richer, like earth. Chocolate mixed with alien roots. Vera took it with both hands, surprised by the kindness again. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jackson." He said, "Used to be Lieutenant Jackson Ward. Earth Recon Forces, used to be." She asked. "Retired," he said with a short laugh. "Or maybe just tired." Vera managed a small smile. The first one in days. It looked strange on her face, as if her muscles had forgotten how to do it. "You live here, alone?" she asked. Looking around the outpost, Jackson nodded. "This post was abandoned after the peace treaty, but I stayed behind." "Why?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Because peace doesn't last long, and someone has to keep watch." That answer confused her, but she didn't push. She had questions, so many, but they could wait. Jackson stood up and walked to a shelf, pulling out a medical scanner. He pointed it at her and raised an eyebrow. "Do you mind?" Vera shook her head. He scanned her quickly, checking vitals. Her heart rate was slow. Her temperature still too low, but nothing serious. "You'll live," he said, placing the scanner back. "But you need rest, food, and maybe a reason too." "Keep going." Vera looked at him carefully. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked again, softly this time. Jackson didn't move. He stared at the fire, then said, "Because once, long ago, someone helped me, too." Vera didn't ask more. Some pain doesn't need details, just needs silence. She leaned back and closed her eyes, this time, not from fear, but from something close to safety later. Jackson checked the outpost's long-range scanners. Something pinged on the edge of the radar, small ship, fast, circling far above. He frowned and marked it, setting up a jammer. No transmissions in, no transmissions out. Whoever was looking for her might already be close. He walked back into the main room where Vera now slept again. She looked peaceful, but he knew peace was temporary, especially on this planet, especially for people like them. Jackson sat in his chair, checking the power grid, refueling the backup heaters. He moved like a man preparing for something, because he didn't believe in fate. But he believed in patterns and this girl. This moment. It wasn't just chance. Something was coming. And when it did, he would be ready. The 13th door had opened, and whatever walked through next. He wouldn't face it alone. Vera opened her eyes slowly. Warmth surrounded her, and for a moment she forgot where she was. Then she saw the metal walls, the humming heater, and the human man sitting at the table. Jackson sat sharpening a long blade, his movements slow and careful, his eyes lifted when he noticed she was awake. "You survived the night," he said with a dry smile. "I didn't think I would," Vera whispered, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Her muscles ached, but the pain reminded her she was alive, the kind of pain that meant survival, not defeat. Jackson placed the knife down and walked over with a small tray. "Food," he said, setting it near her. "Real food, not ration cubes." She blinked at the sight-cooked roots, steamed grain, and something that smelled like fish. Her hands shook as she picked up the fork. The first bite brought tears to her eyes. Not from the flavor, but because someone had cared enough to feed her. "You were running from someone," Jackson said, watching her carefully. "Who?" Vera stopped chewing. Her jaw tightened, and her gaze dropped to the tray. "I can't tell you everything," she said. "It's not safe for you. I decide what's safe for me." Jackson replied, "You stepped through my door. Now, your problems are mine." She looked up, searching his face for signs of cruelty or lies. But all she saw was a tired man with honest eyes. So she spoke, slowly, carefully. "My people sent me on a mission," she said. "Peace talks with a border colony. But when I arrived, the colony had been attacked. My own ship's logs were erased. They blamed you?" Jackson asked. Vera nodded. "High Command said I leaked the coordinates to the enemy. They said I betrayed our people." Jackson didn't speak. He only leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, listening. "I ran," Vera said, her voice trembling. "They chased me across 3 cities, through the tunnels, even into human sectors. No one would help me, until now," Jackson said quietly. Vera met his gaze. "Yes," she said, "until you." The silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy with meaning. Jackson stood and walked to a storage crate in the corner. He opened it and pulled out a worn black jacket. "Put this on," he said, tossing it to her. "You'll need it if we go outside." "We?" Vera asked, surprised. Jackson didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the console and checked the radar. The small blip was closer, now still not landing, but circling, watching. "They're looking for you," he said, and there. Getting bold, Vera stood slowly, wearing the jacket now. The sleeves were too long, but the warmth helped her think clearly. "I don't want you to get involved," she said. "They'll kill you for helping me." Jackson turned, his eyes cold and steady. "Let them try," he said. "I've faced worse." Vera didn't argue. She could see he wasn't bluffing. This man had lived through fire, just like her. Maybe that's why he understood. Maybe that's why she felt something strange growing inside her, feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. Later that day, Jackson took her outside for the first time. The snow had calmed, and the air was sharp but clear. They walked along the fence of the outpost, checking the solar grid and the motion detectors. "You have defenses?" Vera asked. "Enough to slow them down," Jackson said. "But if we're staying, we need to improve everything." "We?" she asked again, testing the word. He nodded once. "For now, we're a team." Vera felt something warm in her chest. At those words, not just safety, but purpose. She wasn't just a runaway anymore. She was someone worth protecting, someone worth fighting beside. As they walked back inside, a soft beep echoed from the console. An encrypted message flashed. Across the screen, a known source, heavily coded. Jackson stared at it for a moment, then deleted it without opening. "Was that for me?" Vera asked. Jackson looked at her. "No," he said, "but they're getting closer." That night, as she rested again near the heater, Jackson stood near the window, blade in hand. The stars above seemed too quiet, too calm. He knew the silence wouldn't last. He knew something bigger was coming, and so did she. They were no longer just a soldier and a fugitive. They were survivors, allies, and soon they would be warriors together. A red light blinked steadily on the control panel. It wasn't a false alarm this time. Jackson leaned over the console, his jaw tight, his fingers moving across the screen. The enemy ship had dropped to low orbit, and its scanners were active. They were searching for something or someone inside. The outpost, the silence grew tense. Vera stood behind him, watching the screen with wide eyes. "That's them," she whispered. "The ones who chased me across the cities." Jackson didn't flinch. He had seen worse things in war. But this was different. This was personal now. "They're not landing yet," he said. "They're trying to find a signal. You blocked mine, right?" Vera asked, panic in her voice. "I blocked everything," Jackson replied. "No signals in or out." But she didn't look comforted. "They don't need a signal to find me," she said. "They have dogs, genetic hunters." Jackson turned, staring at her sharply. "You didn't tell me they'd use those?" "I didn't know they'd go this far," Vera said, her voice cracking. "If they're here with dogs, they won't stop until they smell my blood." Jackson walked over to a hidden compartment on the wall and opened it. Inside were old weapons, handmade explosives, thermal rounds. "Then we make sure they smell something else first," he said calmly. Vera watched as he began loading the gear. Moving with practiced hands, she had seen soldiers before, but this man was different. There was a stillness in him, a cold readiness, that came only from surviving too many fights. "You're going to fight them?" she asked. "For me?" Jackson looked at her. "I'm not doing this for you," he said. "I'm doing it because this place is mine, and no one gets to take it from me." Vera lowered her gaze, but she smiled slightly. She knew he was lying, just a little, outside. The snow had stopped falling, but the air had turned heavy. Like it knew violence was coming. Birds were gone. The wind had stilled. Even the clouds hung lower, like watchers waiting for blood. Jackson placed small mines near the entry paths. He activated the old defense drones and checked the turrets. They weren't perfect, but they would buy time. Time was all he needed. Vera followed him, helping where she could. She wasn't trained for war, but she had survived enough to understand what mattered. Watch, listen, move quietly. Trust your partner when night fell. The lights in the outpost went dark. Jackson killed the power manually, leaving only the emergency systems on. They waited in silence, both watching the same screen. Then it came 3 heat signatures moving through the trees. Not ships, not tanks, foot soldiers, fast, armored, hunting something cold and afraid. Jackson loaded his rifle and looked at Vera. "They're testing the perimeter," he said. "If they cross the fence, they're mine." "Don't kill them unless you must," Vera said suddenly. "They're just soldiers. They don't know the truth." Jackson gave her a long look. "You still believe truth matters?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "because if it doesn't, then I ran for nothing." That answer stayed with him longer than he expected. The first explosion came just past midnight. One of the dogs triggered a mine and went silent in the snow. The second followed quickly, metal scraping and a scream cut short. Jackson moved like a shadow, slipping out the side door and flanking the attackers. Vera stayed inside, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the radar. Outside, flashes lit up the dark gunfire, sparks, shouts in a language she didn't know. Then silence. Again, Jackson returned 10 minutes later, covered in dirt and snow. 3 bodies lay in the clearing. 2 human mercenaries and 1 hybrid dog he had aimed to disable. but they had aimed to kill. They lost. They'll send more, Vera said, her voice shaking. I know, Jackson replied, but they'll be slower now. She looked at him. Really looked. You didn't have to do this, she said. I was just a girl on your doorstep. You were a girl left behind, Jackson said. I know what that feels like. That night, neither of them slept. The sky above remained dark, the orbiting ship still watching. But now there was a line drawn in the snow, and on one side of it stood a human and an alien. Alone together, shadows had come to the horizon, but they hadn't swallowed them yet. Asterisk, the morning was too quiet. Not a single sound came from the woods. Not even the wind. The trees stood still, as if holding their breath. Vera stepped outside with Jackson, her eyes scanning the white forest beyond the fence. The snow was stained now dark patches where blood had mixed with ice. She clutched the jacket tighter around her chest. Something's wrong, she whispered. Jackson nodded, already feeling it in his bones. This isn't over, he said. They're preparing for something bigger. The orbiting ship was gone from radar. But that didn't mean it had left. It just meant it had cloaked. Jackson had seen this tactic before, during border raids, disappear from scanners, then strike. Hard and fast, inside the outpost. He checked his weapons again, rifle charged, sidearm ready. Explosives in place, but this time he wasn't preparing to defend. He was preparing to end it. They'll keep sending soldiers until they catch you, he told Vera, and the next team won't stop at the fence. Vera nodded slowly. No, she said. That's why I need to leave. Jackson looked at her, surprised. Run again. He asked. Fight, she replied, her voice steady. But not from here. If I make it to the nearest relay tower, I can send a full data burst. It has the truth. Everything they tried to hide. Jackson raised an eyebrow. You had this the whole time. It's in me, Vera said, placing her hand on her chest. A genetic memory capsule. Hidden until I activate it. Jackson stared for a moment, then gave a short nod. Then we get you there, he said. But they won't make it easy. He opened a secret hatch beneath the outpost floor. An old snow skimmer, dusty but functional, rested inside. I haven't used it in years, he said, but it'll get us there fast, if it holds. Vera smiled faintly. It's more than I had yesterday. They packed what they could: food, water, weapons, medical gear. By the time they were ready, the sun had risen halfway, casting a dull blue glow across the frozen world. As they moved to the skimmer, Jackson paused. He turned back toward the woods. I can feel them, he said. They're coming. The skimmer roared to life, its engine coughing once before settling into a deep hum. They sped across the snow, the wind biting at their faces behind them. Dark shapes began to move through the forest, fast and deadly. The chase had begun. Vera held on tight as Jackson weaved between frozen rocks and half-buried roots. Blaster fire echoed behind them, bright flashes lighting up the forest edge. Jackson didn't slow down. He drove like a man who had done this too many times and lived every time. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air. Something hit the back of the skimmer. Vera screamed as it spun wildly, nearly flipping. Jackson wrestled the controls and brought it back on course. But now smoke poured from the engine. We won't make the tower, he growled. Not in this. Then we run, Vera said. Already climbing out, they abandoned the skimmer near a frozen cliffside and ran through the trees. Jackson laid mines behind them, planting traps in their path. Each step felt heavier, but they didn't stop. Then came the sound they feared, a howl, deep and unnatural. Not a dog, something worse. Jackson turned just in time to see a giant armored beast crash through the trees. Its eyes glowed red, metal fused into its skin. Claws like razors. Keep running, he shouted to Vera. Then he turned and fired, his shot slamming into the creature's face. It didn't fall, it roared, charged, and knocked him backward. Vera screamed, reaching for him, but Jackson shouted again, "Go!" She ran, tears in her eyes, knowing she might not see him again. Jackson stood, blood on his face, gripping a thermal grenade. He waited until the beast lunged again, then threw the grenade into its open mouth. The explosion shook the forest, throwing snow into the air like dust. When it cleared, the beast was gone. And so was Jackson. Vera fell to her knees nearby, the force knocking her down. She crawled to the blast site, coughing from the smoke. She found him barely breathing, armor cracked but alive. "I told you to run," he whispered, with a weak smile. "You're the one who said we're a team," she said, helping him up. They moved again, slower now, but more determined than ever. The tower was near just a few more hills. Behind them, the forest burned, smoke rising into the gray sky. But ahead, the truth waited. Fire had come to the snow. And together, they had survived it. The tower rose like a needle from the icy hills. Old, broken, but still standing. It had once been part of a relay grid used during the war now. It was forgotten by most, but Vera remembered it. She had studied old maps in secret, hoping one day she'd reach this place. Jackson limped beside her, his steps heavy but steady. His side was bruised, ribs likely cracked. But he didn't complain. He only asked one thing. "Are you ready to tell me what you're really carrying?" Vera stopped walking, her breath misting in the cold air. Then she turned to face him, her silver eyes serious. "It's not a weapon," she said. "It's knowledge." Jackson narrowed his eyes. "What kind of knowledge?" She took a slow breath. "A blueprint," she said. "Not for machines, but for peace." Jackson frowned. "Peace doesn't usually get people hunted." Vera nodded. "This one does." They reached the base of the tower. She activated an old panel, placing her hand on a scanner hidden beneath years of frost. It beeped softly, then clicked open. The door slid aside, revealing a narrow passage and dim lights. They stepped inside, and the door sealed behind them. The tower's core was still functional. A central console blinked to life as Vera approached. She looked over her shoulder at Jackson. "I wasn't just a diplomat," she said. "I was part of a secret program." He raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, your people wanted peace, but not everyone agreed." "Exactly," she said. "The data I carry is genetic hit, proves that our species and humans are not enemies by nature. It shows how we're connected." Jackson's expression didn't change, but inside he felt a shift. "You mean? Related?" "Not directly," she replied, "but biologically compatible mentally. Emotionally, even physically. If the data spreads, the war factions will lose power. They survive by keeping hatred alive." Jackson stepped closer to the console. "And you're the only one who has this." Vera nodded. "They destroyed the original lab, killed the scientists, erased every record. But I volunteered to carry the last copy, hidden inside my DNA." He stared at her in silence for a moment, then said, "That's why they framed you, yes?" She said softly. "They made it look like I betrayed my mission, but all I ever wanted was to stop the fighting." Jackson rubbed his face, feeling the weight of her words. "I've seen what war does," he said. "I stopped believing peace was possible." "Then maybe this is your second chance too," she said gently. She activated the core uplink. Lights flickered, and a low hum filled the room. She winced as a sharp beam of light scanned her, extracting the encrypted gene data. Her knees shook, and Jackson rushed to catch her before she collapsed. "I'm fine," she whispered. "It just takes a lot out of me." The console flashed green. Transmission started. Files moving, lines of light dancing across the screen. Then a sudden warning flashed. Signal detected, tracked enemy lock. Imminent, Jackson cursed. They were waiting. Vera stood up, swaying slightly. We have to protect the tower long enough for the upload to finish. He checked the timer. For minutes, he said. That's a long time to hold a line. I'll help, she said. Jackson shook his head. You've done enough. No, she said firmly. This isn't just my fight anymore. He smiled for the first time in hours. I was hoping you'd say that. They moved quickly, sealing the entrance, activating whatever defenses the tower still had. Jackson passed Vera, a small energy pistol, lightweight but deadly. Ever used one of these? He asked. Once, she said. On the guy who tried to kill me. Good enough, he said. The sky outside turned red. A dropship descended fast, engines roaring. Figures jumped from its armed soldiers in black armor. The final hunt had begun. Inside the tower, Jackson and Vera took position near the door. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and nearly out of time. But for the first time since she had started running, Vera felt something strange inside her. She felt ready. She had carried the secret of peace across a galaxy of fire. She had trusted a stranger, faced monsters, and survived betrayal. And now, she would stand and fight, not just to survive, but to finish what she started. And Jackson, he wasn't just protecting her anymore. He was protecting the future. The kind of future he had once stopped believing in. 3 minutes to go, no turning back now. The tower shook as the enemy ship touched down. Snow and dust blasted into the air. Jackson stood near the door, his rifle in hand, calm and ready. Vera knelt by the console, watching the data transfer. Tick upward, 2 minutes left. Outside, the black-armored soldiers moved fast and silent. They formed a line, weapons raised. Red lights blinking across their visors. This wasn't a random squad. This was a kill team. Trained, precise, sent to erase mistakes like her, inside. Jackson checked his last explosive charge. If I go down, you keep that data safe, he said, not looking at Vera. You're not going down, she replied. Standing beside him, weapon in hand, her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. I'm not letting you do this alone. The door control lit up red. They were cutting through metal, sparked as heat blades carved the entrance open. Jackson whispered, let them come. The first soldier burst through. Blaster up. Jackson fired one shot, straight to the chest. The man dropped, armor smoking. 2 more entered. Vera hit one with a clean shot to the leg, sending him crashing into the wall. Jackson took out the other with a knife to the neck. No wasted movement, no mercy, but more kept coming. Jackson was hit in the arm. He fell back with a grunt. Vera dragged him behind a crate and returned fire. 1 minute left. They won't stop. Jackson said through gritted teeth, blood soaking his sleeve. Neither will I, Vera said. Standing again, she fired, heart pounding, her mind focused on one goal: protect the signal. The console flashed. Upload. 90%. Then came the sound of heavy boots, metal striking stone. A large figure stepped into the room. His armor was darker than the rest, his eyes burning red through the visor. The commander, he raised his arm, and, with one strike, knocked Vera aside. She hit the wall hard, groaning, her weapon flying out of reach. Jackson tried to stand, but the pain pulled him down. The commander walked toward the console, aiming a plasma blade at the core. One swing would destroy everything. No, Jackson growled. Forcing himself up, he threw himself forward, grabbing the commander from behind. The two crashed to the ground. Fighting in brutal silence, Vera crawled toward her weapon. Her vision blurry, she heard grunts, metal striking armor, bones breaking. Then silence. She looked up. The commander stood. Again, staggering, but Jackson wasn't moving. Her scream echoed in the tower. No. The commander turned to finish the job, but the console lit up, bright and white. Upload complete signal broadcasted the sound of a deep pulse shot through the room. A burst of data exploded into the sky, spreading across satellites. Relays every open channel. The truth was out. The commander froze. His mission failed. He turned back to Vera, raising his blade, but she was faster. Her shot hit him square in the visor. He dropped. Lifeless, smoke filled the tower. Bodies on the ground, lights flickering. Vera crawled to Jackson, her hands shaking. He was still breathing barely, his face pale, his side bleeding, but alive. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said, tears falling freely. "We did, outside." The sky lit up, signals beamed across space, reaching colonies, battle stations, and command centers. Leaders saw what had been hidden. The war wasn't built on truth, it was built on fear. In the days that followed, chaos turned into questions, questions turned into pressure, and pressure brought change. Peace talks began again, this time. With real voices, real proof, Vera stood before leaders of both species. Jackson beside her, arm in a sling. They told the story not of war, but of mercy. Mercy that began when one human opened a door, when one girl chose not to give up, when two broken lives chose to protect something bigger than themselves. Years passed, the tower became a monument. Not to battle, but to truth, and somewhere, deep in the frozen lands of Valera Prime, a 13th door still stood, rusty, silent, but legendary because it opened when no one else did and changed everything.